to be here, and thanks to everybody for all the organization that went into doing this. I do want to do a little paid political announcement here, political season and all. I want to just make people aware of the organization I started 3 years ago, and it's grown tremendously, called Recovering from Religion. Our motto is, thousands of groups will get you into religion, we're the only one that will help you out. And I have been promoted to the board of directors, and we've got an executive director and a deputy executive director, and they really run the show. But we now have 150 groups meeting monthly all over the world, talking about the issues of how to deal with leaving religion. How do we deal with my formerly my fundamentalist mother-in-law? How do I deal with my husband who's still religious? And all those emotional, psychological issues. Also, less than a year ago, I started another initiative called the Secular Therapist Project. If you are a therapist, I want to talk to you. You can't leave this room until I talk to you, because I want to recruit you. It's difficult to find secular therapists, especially in places like this where there's so much religiosity. And it's also, as a client, it's hard to find them. As a therapist, it's hard to let people know you're secular and the secular people can come. So that's the paid political announcement. Let's move on through, and we will start the sacred part. How many Pastafarians do we have in here? Okay. You must bow your heads while I do this. The rest of you can just sit there. That's a picture taken of me at the American Atheist Convention, and I do say that is a full-blown replica of what's underneath my gown. Dear Flying Spaghetti Monster, we thank you for giving us sex and sexuality, whether homo or heterosexual, bi or trans, and for not making us like those uptight Christians, Muslims, Mormons, and Baptists. We thank you for wonderful masturbatory fantasies, and for the pornography upon which they're often based. FSN, we ask that you grant us sex partners, lovers, wives, and husbands that know where our G-spot, our clitoris, and the sweet spot on our penis is. Grant us long, loving foreplay with deep wet kisses followed by huge orgasms and loving cuddles after. Grant us the courage and wisdom to communicate openly and honestly with our partners and give them more pleasure than we receive, for we know it is far better to give than to receive. Your noodliness, we do not need 72 virgins. In fact, we ask you to send us no virgins, for we don't want to have to train them. Unless, of course, they're very, very willing to be trained. We especially plead today that you not send any repressed Christian virgins, male or female, for they will only feel guilty and cause great problems with their abstinence-only training. Your posthumous, we ask that you give us the wisdom to understand and appreciate our partner's kinks or lack thereof. Whether foot worship or spanking, ropes or talking dirty, help us to appreciate their full sexuality and lead us not into temptation, judgment, and scorn for others when their sexual preferences are not ours. We do ask in the name of Raman for retribution, shame, and scorn on pedophile priests, hypocritical ministers sleeping with the choir director, and gay-bashing closeted ministers, etc. Oh, spaghetti, we ask that you send condoms and birth control in abundance, and your blessings on the many dedicated workers at the Trojan Condom Factory and Planned Parenthood. In the name of Dan Savage and Greta Christina, we pray, for they are the true gods and goddesses of this world. Do I hear a ramen? Amen. Okay, I just have a few serious questions here for you to consider as I talk here today. The first one is, do you masturbate? I do. How many of you masturbate? We've got a few liars in the group, it looks like. Can you imagine asking that question in a Mormon temple? Can you imagine asking a Baptist church or a Catholic church or a Muslim mosque? If I did, I mean, 2/3 to 3/4 of the people raise their hand. The other 2/3, 1/4 are lying, but that's okay. We'll convert you before we're finished here today. Masturbation is a biological imperative. Every primate on the planet masturbates. And humans are the champions, practically, of masturbation. So it's no mistake that we masturbate, we masturbate a lot. It has an actual evolutionary function for us as human beings. But unfortunately, many religions say it's wrong. And we're going to explore some of that, but we first of all have to understand us as sexual evolutionary creatures, biological creatures. So the title of this talk is Sexy Evolution, What the Pope Does Not Know About Human Sexuality. Or, just for the benefit of you folks here today, what Thomas S. Mann does not know about sexuality. All through your body of evolution. It's undeniable just in how your body is put together. It's in your breasts, whether it's men or women. Why do men have nipples, okay? The shape of the penis, the shape of the vagina and the clitoris, the chemistry in the semen, the chemistry of the vagina. The sounds you make, ladies, the sounds you make while having orgasm even, are evidence of evolution. The viscosity of your semen and the composition of sperm. All those things have some pointers that go right back to our evolution and what's going on in us as creatures evolving in this world. Now, sex organs are among the most rapidly evolving parts of our body. Species can speciate very rapidly based only upon sex organs. For example, there was a study of water striders in just a single pond, 15 different water striders, all of different species. You and I could look at them and not tell the difference. Except if you look at the male sex organ, you could tell every species was different. Every one of them had a slightly different pattern in the penis of the male. So speciation can happen just that fast through things that appear to be identical almost, but just the sex organs are evolving. Now, a fellow named Carl Linnaeus, that you may have read about in your biology, the great father of classification, biological and botanical classification, was accused of being a sex pervert because he liked to look at sex organs. This is a sex organ. So is this. So is this. And so is this. All of these are sex organs, and several of these are very, very closely related. Flowers. Flowers are just the sex organs of any particular flowering plant. Not all plants flower, of course. So Carl Linnaeus found you could classify a flower as a species just based upon the sex organs of that particular plant. Well, animals have sex organs too, and those sex organs are evolving. And they're evolving quite rapidly, probably just as rapidly as flowers. Flowers are responding to the environment, to the temperature, to the insects, to the rainfall. All these things are impacting the flower itself, how well it reproduces, how well it creates seeds, it gets pollinated. And as the environment changes, the flower itself may change or evolve in its methodology. I mean, look at the relationship between some orchids and some insects. Without the insect, the orchid itself would die. Look at orchids, period. Orchids are all related, and yet they have vast, just tremendous differences in their flowers. All these different things that we call orchids, closely related. Well, animals are the same way. And we're going to look at a specific animal here. This is the Argentine bluebill. Now, the Argentine bluebill is an interesting fellow because he has a penis. 97% of all birds do not have penises. Only 3% of birds have penises. And the ducks, primarily the waterfowl, tend to have penises. And ducks have rather large ones. They're the John Holmes of the animal world. Now, you guys who laughed, I know what you know. You're porn addicts, aren't you? You know who John Holmes was. So we're going to start off looking at some porn that Kyle has never seen before, and I'm going to win a bet here right now. Okay? He says, I bet you got it. I told him we're going to look at porn. And I said, well, it's porn you've never seen before. And he says, I'll bet I have. So we'll see. So we're going to look at this little video. It's only a short video. We're going to do it twice. I want you to really gather it in here. And what we're seeing is slowed down 10 times. So imagine what we're seeing is 10 times as fast in the real world. And this is a Argentine bluebill. See that right there? Kyle, you ever seen that before? Oh, shit. It's a good thing I didn't put anybody on that one. Okay, let's look at it one more time. Our little friend here. All right. Now, the interesting thing about birds is they run off a different system than you and I do. Guys, your penis runs off of the blood pressure system. Duck penises run off of the lymph system. And just think about it. How far back evolutionarily have these animals gone to separate like that? The lymph system. Now, ducks are dinosaurs, basically. Maybe dinosaurs ran their penises off of the lymph system. I have no idea. I'm not sure anybody does. But interesting how you can have a similar insemination methodology run off of two very different systems in the organism. I used to own, I have a big pond in my front yard, about 1.5 acre pond, and I used to have ducks, geese, and swans. I had 2 swans until one day it froze over and the coyotes came out and had a waterfowl holocaust. It looked like somebody had busted about 50 feather mattresses all over my property. It took months for the feathers to get out here, but I never replaced them because I loved my ducks, swans, and geese. But what I did notice was ducks tend to rape each other. And I would notice that the female duck would like a particular guy. She would waddle around real sexy. And he would notice, and then he'd hop on and do his thing. Well, that's how fast he's doing it. You know, it's like 1 second in and out. He's finished. Well, the other guys would notice, and suddenly there would be 3, 4, even 5 other ducks, male ducks, hopping on the female. I noticed this many years ago, long before I knew what I'm telling you here today. She did not like it. The sounds she made with her boyfriend were very different than the sounds she made when these other guys were on her. And she would try to escape, she would bite, she would struggle. If she could get to the water, she would dive underneath the water. And I've been told by biologists that female ducks will even drown trying to get away from their rapist. So that's kind of interesting. Ducks rape. Those cute little guys out there are rapists. And for years, people couldn't figure out why do ducks rape and why do male ducks have such big penises. What's going on there? In fact, here's a picture of a penis. And then right there is a picture of a penis. You already saw another one. Interesting thing, until Dr. Patricia Brennan decided to do something revolutionary, she decided to look inside the female for clues about the male penis. Nobody had ever thought about this before because most of the biologists were male, right? You had to figure it out. Look inside the female. There may be a clue there. What she found, she's out of the University of Edinburgh, I believe, in Scotland. What she found was the female penis is corkscrewed. Did you notice the male penis was corkscrewed when it came out? She also found the female penis is corkscrewed the opposite direction of the male. Isn't that interesting? She also found that there's all sorts of pockets in the female vagina that can stop semen, keep it from getting in. So what Dr. Brennan thought was, I wonder how many of the eggs coming out of these females are fathered by the rapists. So she started doing DNA testing on the eggs that came out of females. She did it for many females, and she found that 97% of all the eggs that came out of female were fathered by the guy she liked, by her boyfriend, so to speak. 3% were fathered by the rapists. Now, if your name is Todd Aiken, running for Senate in Missouri, you're going to love what I'm talking about here today. But this only applies to ducks, guys. It does not apply to humans. I am from Kansas. I'm like 20 miles from Missouri, where I live. Todd Aiken's on that side. And Fred Phelps of God Hates Fags is 45 miles on the other side. I mean, I am surrounded by craziness in my particular area. Oh, and that's just the beginning. There's so much. Sam Brownback is our governor. Yeah, Bill Klein is our attorney general. And he's trying to have a trial Monday. We find out if Obama really has a birth certificate or not. Whether he'll show up on the Kansas ballot or not in November. Yeah, crazy stuff. So what we call this, I give this example because it's really interesting, it's very visual, it's easy to understand. This is an example of something that happens in almost every species, every sexual species on the planet. It's called antagonistic coevolution. What it is that females have their strategy for reproduction, males have their strategy for reproduction, and they are antagonistic. The interests of the female are different than the interests of the male. The rapists are trying to get to that egg. The female is saying, no, I really don't want you. I don't like you. I'm going to find a way to stop you. And she'll corkscrew her vagina the opposite direction, and she will put traps all through there to prevent the semen from getting where it wants to go. So it's a battle, if you will, within the female duck against the male duck. Every species on the planet does this. That is sexual in its own ways. Even flowers have this kind of a evolutionary war going on between the male and female parts of the flower and the pollen. So antagonistic evolution. Every species has their own strategy. And the different sexes have their own unique strategy. That's, of course, matched to some degree, but antagonistic at the same time. Here is a set of penises preserved in formaldehyde of different mammalian penises. You can almost look at a mammalian penis and guess at the reproductive strategy of that penis. Guys, any of those look like yours? No, it doesn't. Because each of these mammals has its own strategy, and it's different than ours. There's no two species on the planet that have exactly the same strategy for sexual reproduction. Here's one I think is fascinating, the spiny anteater. It has 4 heads. These two ejaculate. First time he has sex, he ejaculates out of this side. The next time he ejaculates out of that side. These two have no openings, so they can't ejaculate there. So it's alternating ejaculation. This poor guy has to make love to that girl very, very carefully. Wouldn't you say? This is an animal that lives in Australia. So again, as this tells us there's a sexual strategy going on here. Have no idea what the inside, what the giant side of this particular animal looks like, but we can guess the female's probably got her strategy for or against that. Sex is actively evolving even in the great apes, and it's very evident when you look at how the 4 great apes work. And there are only 4 great apes. If you think the orangutan is a great ape, you're wrong. Genetically, they're really quite a ways away from us. And of course, geographically from Africa as well. They're not even in Africa. So here's the 4 apes. We have the gorillas. We have the chimpanzees. We have the bonobos. Used to be thought of as pygmy chimps. They even thought they were chimps, but they're not. And then we have humans, of course. Here's the way the penises kind of roll out here with these 4 species. This is the gorilla penis. Yeah, isn't that interesting? This is the chimpanzee and bonobo penis, and this is the human penis, roughly in proportion. We're using this because we're not to the porn part of our presentation. We're just using vegetables. I didn't put any asparagus up there, broccoli up there, because I didn't want to get in trouble with Greta. I've heard her talk twice now, and I am convinced that's the best way to really piss her off. It's a broccoli. So I really need to pay you back, Greta. But yeah. Each primate has its own sexual strategy, and it's actually quite different than ours, but has overlapping similarities. We'll begin with the gorilla here. For the gorilla, size matters, but not penis size. Body size matters. And it's something we call in biology sexual dimorphism. The bigger the difference between the male and female of a given species, the more females the male tries to dominate. Think about the elephant seal, who's probably 3 to 5 times bigger than the average female, and he will dominate half a dozen to a dozen females. Think of a bull in a herd of cattle. The bull will try to dominate a rather large herd of females. So the greater the difference, and this is a rule of thumb in all mammals, it doesn't apply to other parts of the animal kingdom, but the rule of thumb in mammals is the bigger the difference between male and female, the more females the male tends to try to dominate. So in the gorillas, the female, when she becomes sexually mature, leaves the troop and goes and finds a silverback, a mature male to mate with. But she doesn't mate immediately. She has to get accepted into the group. And even though she's sexually receptive and she's sexually having estrus, he probably won't mate with her for about a year, maybe even 2 years. He's already got 2 or 3 other gals around, so he's not like hard up or anything. So he's waiting, and she has to work her way in. And females will stay anywhere from 4, 5, 6, 7 years with that male. But when the female gets tired of him, she can leave. They're not married in the sense of for life. They are there, as long as they decide they want to stay. And when the female doesn't like it anymore, gets tired of it, she goes and wanders through the forest and finds another silverback. Now, while she's with that male, she's supposed to only be having sex with him. That's the rules, according to him, of course. But, if a nice-looking guy wanders through and she likes him, she may go out in the forest and have a quickie with him. And them quickies last less than a minute. So ladies, if you're dissatisfied with what you got now, don't go to the gorilla. That won't work for you. Their penis is only 1¼ inches. And their testes are half the size of ours. They actually don't make much semen. They don't need to, because they only have sex about once a month. I mean, it's not very common. And they only have sex when the female is in estrus. They have sex like most species on the planet only have sex when the female actually has eggs that are fertile and ready for fertilization, or they're ready for fertilization. So actually the gorilla's mating strategy is kind of common in the animal world. It's not particularly unusual, although it's got some unusual aspects to it. So that's the gorilla. Let's look at the idea that sex takes on other functions. The gorilla's kind of the Joe Blow of the animal kingdom, mates like a lot of other animals do. But how many of you have typed on a computer the last day or two? All right, did you evolve to type on a computer? Is that what your hands are made for? No, probably not. This is related to what Greta was saying a little bit earlier. We have repurposed our hands to type on computers. These hands were made for picking fruit, for holding tools, for that kind of thing. They weren't made for typing on computers. We repurposed them in that. And our species has taken sex and repurposed it in some interesting ways. But first of all, let's look at other species and how they purpose sex. Beginning with social dominance. For example, you might use sex for social dominance, establish hierarchies. You might use it to create bonds. You might use it to reduce conflict, or you might use it to reduce stress. And what we're going to find is all these are used in some form among the other 3 great apes. So with the chimp, I call the chimp the best sperm win, because the chimps have a mating strategy that depends upon copious amounts of sperm being produced. I'll explain that. This is a multi-mating species. There's 2 or 3 top males in the troop, and they get their pick of all the females. Lower status males may not get sex at all, or they have to sneak off into the forest to get it once in a while. But they're not given high priority. And the females seek out high status males. Females actually, when they're in estrus, present themselves to the high status male, literally asking for sex. Very, very low status females may have a hard time getting anybody to screw them. Literally, put your butt up there and hope for somebody to come for you. That's what the low status chimps, that's the problem with low status female chimps. It's also, and the low status female chimp doesn't want to mate with some low status male chimp. So it's got, it's a real problem in that particular species. If you look at it from a human perspective, obviously. So they do have a large penis relative to their body size. It's actually a pretty good size. They have extremely large testes, double the size of humans. Huge testes. And they produce copious amounts of sperm because the chimp has a flush them out strategy for mating. Now think about this. They're a multi-mate species. The top guys are mating with all females. Well, the top guy mates first, but the second guy gets second choice. Sloppy seconds. And he has to get rid of what went in the first time. So the way he does it is he flushes it out with copious amounts of semen. And the third guy comes along, and he has to do the same thing. So it's a flush them out strategy. It's hoping that my semen will be the semen that finally makes it to the egg. They only mate in estrus. And the female chimp has a big red billboard on her butt when she's in estrus. Everybody knows she is sexually receptive at that time. When she's not in estrus, she's not particularly interested in sex. Now the guys probably still are a little bit, but they don't seem as interested in a female if the advertisement's not there. And sex lasts about 30 seconds. But they can have sex a lot throughout the day. A lot more sex happens among chimps than it does among our friends the gorillas. So you can see a sexual strategy here of the size of the penis, when the females mate, how they advertise who they mate with, dominance hierarchies in there. How many sexual acts does a chimpanzee get involved with for every live birth? Thousands, probably. So here we can see that sex has taken on a purpose, not necessarily for reproduction. You might have 1,000 sex acts and no babies be born. That's the evidence that sex has been repurposed. Because my dog only has sex when she is fertile, and that's pretty much the only time the guys are interested in her too, except when he's humping my leg, or your lip, or something like that. So you can see that most animals only have sex when the female is receptive. That's not true of chimps, and it's not true of our friends, the bonobos. Bonobos are about 10% smaller than chimps, and the females are about 10% smaller than the males. This is a small population in Africa. It's actually endangered. And they're not seen in too many zoos. I think San Diego Zoo and Cleveland Zoo are about the only ones in the United States. And Berlin Zoo, and I think Amsterdam has them as well. And Atlanta. There's Franz de Waal. Has anybody read Franz de Waal's books on bonobos? Oh, nobody's read it? Okay, great. Great stuff, Franz de Waal. But he's kind of an expert on chimps and bonobos. Well, in bonobos, it's kind of a reverse of the chimps. The females rule the roost. Then there's usually an alliance of 2 or 3 females that are the matriarchs of the group. When a female becomes sexually mature, she leaves the troop to go find another troop. And the males stay in the troop. So the sons stay with the mothers for their entire life. It's an interesting system. And it's not unlike some human systems. In some human systems, the female has to marry outside the clan, and the male stays in the clan, and vice versa. In some of their systems, it reverses. But we can see this kind of system among the bonobos. Wow, the bonobos have orgies every day. Here's what happens. When somebody finds a tree with fruit in it, they jump up and down and they yell and they make a big ruckus. Everybody comes to where the fruit tree is, and they first have to fuck everybody before anybody eats the fruit. Everybody gets sex. Males have sex with females, females have sex with females, males have sex with males. Everybody gets into having sex, and then they settle down and enjoy the meal. If a predator should go by, a large cat or tiger or something comes through the forest, and they're all huddled and they're all just really afraid they might get eaten, once the danger is past, they have an orgy. Everybody has sex. It relieves the stress. That's what it's all about, stress relief among the bonobos. Bonobos masturbate as well as have sex in every combination. There's probably more sex between female and female-to-female sex than there is any other combination of sex, although there's quite a bit of male-to-male sex as well. When 2 bonobos get in a fight, which is not very common because it's a fairly peaceful, quite unlike the chimps. Chimps can get in fights and literally hurt or kill other chimps. That is extremely rare in bonobos, if not unheard of. When bonobos get in a fight, when the fight is finished, they have sex. So that relieves the tension, brings the bond back. So the bonobo menstruates, but they have hidden estrus, hidden menstruation, just like you do. You cannot look at a bonobo and tell if the female is receptive or not. Because bonobos have sex anytime they darn well please, just like humans. But unlike chimps, and unlike gorillas, and unlike almost every other species on the planet. So, huge testes with copious amounts of semen, just like our friends the chimps. Flush them out strategy too, isn't it? Because they're putting a heck of a lot of semen into the female's vagina, and somebody else was already there before me, so I got to flush him out and to give me a chance at the egg. So they make their sex lasts 30 to 40 seconds, and they have thousands of sex acts for every live birth. It is very clear among the bonobos that sex has been repurposed, not for reproduction, but for bonding, conflict resolution, and stress management. Wow, isn't that wonderful? Sex for stress management. I'm all in favor of that. So here's a comic I always think is kind of funny. It takes place in the zoo, and he's looking at the bonobos. He says, it says here that bonobo society's females are in charge, and sex, rather than violence, is used to keep order. And she says, well, thank God we've evolved. Here's a picture of the bonobos. This is two females having sex, missionary style, and French kissing each other. Now imagine, just put yourself in the shoes of a creationist elementary school teacher on field trip to the San Diego Zoo. And you see these two females having sex, kissing each other, missionary style, and French kissing each other. It might mess up the lesson plan for that particular day. Yeah. Here's a male-female having sex. Here is kind of a picture of the clitoris of the female. The female clitoris is about that big, exactly the size of a small penis probably, and they love to rub the clitorises. France DeWall reports that two females having sex together, rubbing their clitoris together, appear to have orgasms just like human females. In fact, his words are, the look on a bonobo female's face looks very similar to a human female when she's having an orgasm too. I'm assuming they study both species equally well. Don't know that for sure. Look at this right here. Let's see. This is a bonobo penis. Guys, you've got to be really careful. Does it look like yours? No, it sure doesn't, does it? We'll come back to that. Why is the penis different? So, what we've seen here is evidence of a lot of evolutionary change that's going on in three species that are really, really closely related. Genetically, we are as closely related to the bonobos and chimps and the gorillas as anything on the planet. So we're really closely, and yet look how far we've departed in our strategy. We'll come back to humans in a minute. But you can see this already, you can see it. So rapid sexual change can even be seen in the genes. Just this week, I took this quote out of Science News for September 8th. When scientists compared 1,880 proteins encoded by genes from humans and rodents, a number of proteins involved in reproduction ranked among those with the greatest number of changes. 3 are directly involved in sperm-egg interaction. So there's genetic evidence. There's a lot of evolutionary change going on within the reproductive system. And just in the last year or two, there's been new research that shows human eggs have, they can't let all those sperm in there. And by the time the sperm get there, there's 100 of them and they're all trying to get in. The egg does not want to let 100 sperm in there. It just wants to let one sperm in. So there's evidence the egg literally tests the sperm and kind of makes him pass a test. And the guy that passes the test the best gets in. The minute that sperm gets in, the whole place shuts down. Nobody else is going to get in. Well, you can actually have an incompatibility. Men, guys, you can have sperm that never, ever pass the test or an egg. In other words, you cannot impregnate that particular female. You might be able to impregnate another female, but that one you've got a mismatch for. It's like you don't have the key to her eggs. It's rare, but it's very likely and very possible. In fact, may even be the reason for speciation in some species. This mismatch can happen or has happened in the past. So let's look at the human mating strategy, and we can see that there's antagonistic coevolution going on in us as well. Why is the human penis so large? It's actually quite large for the body our size. Why is it shaped the way it is? Remember what the bonobo's penis looked like. Why does human sex last so long? Wasn't anybody up there that lasted more than about a minute. Why do humans have testes that are larger than gorillas but smaller than bonobos and chimps? Why does human sperm have different kinds of sperm? There's 3 kinds of sperm in human semen. Why do women have hidden estrus, menstruation? And it's the same thing as bonobos. Bonobos have hidden menstruation, hidden estrus. Why is the female tract so hostile to sperm? Gals, you are an obstacle course for us. It's really difficult for us to get where we need to go. And why do women have breasts? I mean, these are all questions that evidently have a real good evidence that something's going on in evolution that's causing these things to come about. So everything we see in ourselves, in humans, we can see in other species. Now, there's no other species that is exactly the same strategy we have. But everything you've seen here that I've described, you can see in another species in some measure that's like ours. Now, if you're sensitive about pornography or nudity or anything, this is the time to close your eyes or leave. Okay? No. All right. Now we're going to look at the guys here, guys' penises. Look at this penis. Now, does this one look like yours, fellas? That one kind of looks like yours. What's the difference between that penis and the one we saw in the bonobo? Any guesses? Yeah? It goes down. It goes down. Okay, you're a little ahead of me on that one. Just the shape. What's the difference in the shape here?
It's not tapered.
Yeah, right. That's the shape of a bonobo penis. That's quite different, isn't it? Well, we've kind of known this for thousands of years, what the shape of the penis is, but nobody bothered to make any investigations about what might cause this. Kind of like Dr. Patricia Brennan looking in the female duct to find the answer. A fellow named Robin Baker wrote a book called Sperm Wars about 10 years ago, and he did some interesting research that has since been replicated at the University of Pennsylvania many times. What he did is he went down to the porn shop and bought a fake vagina. Guys, you know what those are, right? You can get the fake vaginas in case you don't have anybody to... And he got a dildo that's, right size, average dildo size, and he injected fluid into the fake vagina that was the same viscosity of semen. Now, semen actually comes in a number of different viscosities, so he tried a number of different viscosities. He took the dildo and he put it in the vagina and he pumped it. And guess what happened? 80% of the semen fluid that was in the vagina got pumped out. Now this is interesting. Why would you want to pump semen out? That was the question he had. And what he discovered is this is a pumping system. It's a pumping system for getting semen out. Now as soon as the guy is finished ejaculating inside you ladies, what was that you said? He goes down, right? Doesn't want to pump his own semen out, right? So therein lies some evidence that maybe we are a multi-mate species. Maybe you ladies have been sneaking out more often than we thought you were in the past, over the last 10 or 15, 20,000, 100,000 years. I don't know. So what Robin Baker has established in many ways, and I'm just giving you the tip of the iceberg of what Robin Baker's research shows, is that we are clearly not a monogamous species. We have antagonistic coevolution going on here. You remember the chimps and bonobos have a flush them out strategy. Just pump in as much semen as you can to get rid of the other guy. We have a pump them out strategy where, yeah, the guy's already been up there, but we're going to get him out. And we pump and pump. That's why sex takes about 4 to 10 minutes. It takes time to pump that other guy out. And what Robin Baker found was the longer a fellow has been absent from his sex partner, the harder and deeper and longer he pumped. I don't know if you've noticed that, ladies or guys, but I've noticed it in me. When I get home Sunday night, it's going to be hard and fast. I guarantee you. I don't know where she's been the last 3 or 4 days. She makes a joke about it. She says, "Well, you really worked hard pumping out that fantasy of sperm." I have no way to know if it's fantasy or not. Hey, we're polyamorous, so it doesn't matter. So, the length of human sex. It's a penis pump. Our sex lasts 4 to 10 minutes. The shape of the penis is designed to pump the other guy out. We pump 80% of it out and we deflate immediately. All these things make perfect sense when you look at it from just a mechanical perspective. But there's a heck of a lot more going on than that. And that is what's going on inside the sperm. Remember I talked about the sperm and the egg match? Well, there's a whole lot more there. We actually have 3 kinds of sperm. And one is called the getter sperm. The getter sperm is 10 to 15% of all the sperm, and your ejaculates are designed to get the egg to go fertilize an egg. And then there's the warrior sperm. The warrior sperm are designed to kill other sperm. And then there's the blocker sperm. The blocker sperm, guys, I don't know if you know, I know most of you didn't admit to masturbating, but if you did masturbate, you probably notice as soon as that sperm comes out, it's pretty slick, and then all of a sudden it gets real sticky. Well, that's the blocker sperm doing its thing. The blocker sperm coagulate, kind of like blood coagulates, try and make a block in the cervix to prevent other guys from getting their sperm to the egg. Now, we have the same gene as the bonobos have this blocker function, and the chimps have the blocker function too. But our gene does not work as well as theirs. Chimps and bonobos have very effective blocker sperm. And man, they can plug that cervix up so nobody gets in there. So we've got those 3 sperm. But the war escalates one layer higher. Some of the sperm have proteins that can dissolve the block. Isn't that cool? We dissolve the block, then we can get on with business. It's a war. It's an antagonistic coevolution, and it's happening right inside our own bodies. On top of that, we can see that the vaginal shape, the shape of the vagina, is unique to humans, and probably because we're more upright. There's issues around that because we stand up. And the chemistry is pretty deadly to sperm. It's actually not too pleasant a place for the sperm. And I already talked about the 3 types. So there's pretty good evidence here that we're a multi-mate species, yet the Pope would tell us only have sex monogamously with one partner for the rest of your life, and only for procreation. You can only have sex for to procreate. In other words, the Pope's got a kind of fucked up approach to sex, but then again, he's never fucked anybody, has he? In the human system, sex is for bonding. We have repurposed sex. It's for bonding, it's for recreation, and we have thousands, maybe even 10,000. And look at somebody who never reproduces. If you never have children, then all your sex is wasted, as far as the Pope is concerned. And that tells us very clearly that sex has been repurposed, just like your hands have been repurposed for typing on a computer. Now sex is for bonding, it's for conflict resolution, it's for having fun, it's for recreation. But the Pope would say, you should have sex like a dog. You should have sex like an insect. Because those animals only have sex when the female is ready to reproduce. We are animals, but we have our own unique strategy. And it's actually closely related to the bonobo strategy. Have lots of sex, use it for bonding, use it for conflict management, use it for stress relief. It's got all these other functions that have nothing to do with reproduction. And that's what the Pope and other religious leaders simply don't have a clue about. Now, masturbation is a special case here, because masturbation is actually an important function. Guys, do it all you want, okay? People come up and say, can you be addicted to masturbation? Well, hell yeah, I've been addicted most of my life to it. I love it. And I can't think of anybody to have sex with that I enjoy more than me most of the time. Because my girlfriend's not available or whatever, So It's pretty hard to convince me that there's a problem with people masturbating. Now, if it falls off because you're using it too much, that's probably a problem. Use lots more lubricant. Same thing for you ladies. There's nothing wrong with it. I studied with a great psychotherapist back in the 70s, Albert Ellis, one of the great sexologists as well, and he had a famous saying. He said 97% of men will admit to masturbating, and the other 3% are lying. We know it's similar in women. About 80% of women probably masturbate, and 20% say they don't masturbate. Now, in my clinical practice, what I found was a number of women who say they never masturbate were actually scared shitless of masturbating because they were Catholic or they were raised Catholic and they were told how terrible it would be to touch yourself. And they had the fear of God put in them. What would that woman have been doing for the last 30 or 40 years of her life if she had not been taught that masturbation will send you straight to hell and it makes Jesus cry? I had one person tell me that that's what their mother said. If a woman touches herself, it makes Jesus cry. Or no, I'm sorry, it makes Mary cry. Mary's the one that gets to cry. Mary was a sexually active adolescent herself. I don't know why she'd be so concerned about it. So, male masturbation. Sperm is good for about 5 days. If you ejaculate into a female, that sperm can stay there for up to 5 days. If it's another guy's sperm, you're trying to pump it out, right? But you want fresh sperm. You want macho sperm, the kind that's ready to go do the job. Sperm goes bad in about 5 days inside of you, too. It doesn't last very long, 5 days, and it starts deteriorating. Well, if you're not masturbating, you're not keeping the pipes clean and the inventory fresh. You got to keep it moving through. So, because you never know when you might have an opportunity to impregnate somebody. So you've got to keep the sperm fresh, and that's the purpose of masturbation. Keep the sperm fresh and keep the inventory up to date. Female masturbation, on the other hand, has its own functions. In general, women who masturbate are more sexually responsive, not responsible. I don't think there's a relationship there necessarily. They're more responsive, they lubricate easier, and here's the most important thing, gals. You know your own body. I have had girlfriends that refused to masturbate, and they could not tell me how to give them an orgasm because they couldn't give themselves one. I literally have had to teach women how to masturbate. Not as a clinical psychologist. That would be over the line here. Just take it personally. So, if a woman is not in touch with her own body, how can she expect a man to be in touch with her own body? Or a partner, whether it's a man or a woman, I don't care. Not trying to be one way or the other. But masturbation keeps you in touch with your own body, helps you understand, and, I don't know about you, but things change over time. What turns you on and methods you used at 19 years old to get yourself off are not the same things that might get you off at the age of 40, or 50, or 70, or 80 even. And I think sex should be something we do our whole lives, as long as we can make it happen. Nothing wrong with it. And masturbation is, with me, the most important person in my life. And we also know, for men and for women, that masturbation relieves a lot of stress. I don't care what's going on. If I need to get some stress relief, that's what I do. So, interesting. Here's a trivia question for you. Where's the top porn searches in the United States? The top 2 states? Utah. Yes, we're right here, Utah. Okay, for extra credit, what's number 2? Mississippi. Boy, we got some. All right, you read the book, though. You read it. Oh, she did. Okay. All right, you get the extra credit here. All right, yeah, Utah and Mississippi have the top porn searches. And this has been consistent for over 14 years, as long as we can figure it out from the internet, of course. There's a great book, if you haven't heard of it. It's one of the top 3 books ever written on sex. I'll give you a hint about what the number 1 book is, of course. It's called A Billion Wicked Thoughts. And it's this enormous study on internet searches through paid websites. And they find all sorts of crazy stuff. For example, a very fundamentalist Christian women's site, 40% of all women visiting that site also visit porn sites. I mean, there's all sorts of cool stuff about that, right? Of course, we know about homosexual searches, and our friend Mitt is very happy for closeted Southern hypocrites, because these are the searches for gay porn here. The highest number of searches for gay porn are in these states. Does that make any sense? Now that one kind of makes sense, but none of these. I don't know. Those gays down there, they're all closeted. So let's look at Christian sex, and I talk about human sexuality over here, and Christian sex over here, and Catholic sex, and Mormon sex, and Muslim sex. But they're not human sexuality. Human sexuality is different than Christian, Mormon, Muslim, Baptist. Those are all their own kind of sexualities, and they have little or nothing, on the nothing side more than anything, to do with real human sexuality. What's the Bible know about human sexuality? What does the Quran know about human sexuality? They're both pretty darn misogynistic, male-oriented, brutal, I mean, all sorts of crazy stuff in there. And our Christian friends have cherry-picked, of course. They've cherry-picked very carefully the things they would like to say are the model of marriage that they think is right. They always forget that Abraham had a couple wives and had a son by a slave, and David had hundreds of wives, and Solomon had thousands of wives or whatever. They never remember that. And they also conveniently never remember that in the early stages of Christianity expanded rapidly into pagan areas that practiced polygamy. Paul and Jesus, Matthew, none of those folks ever condemned polygamy. There's only one reference in Timothy about a bishop should have only one wife. It's the only reference in the whole Bible. In other words, everybody else can have as many wives as they want, and did in Saudi Arabia, because Christianity spread there, where polygamy had been practiced for thousands of years. So, we have let Christians define what relationships should be, as we've already heard from Lisa and Greta earlier. My problem is, why do we act like Christians? That's crazy. If we're secular, if we're atheists, we're agnostic, we shouldn't be buying into their particular definition. So the reason I wrote Sex and God is because I want to challenge us as secularists to start moving out of the model of relationships. In fact, I was so thrilled to hear Lisa talk, because it's very similar to what I'm trying to say, only maybe from a different angle. Let's not let them define what the playing field is. We are independent. We are secular. We are not Christians. Why the hell are we acting like it? So I wanted to build a framework for us to think about our sexuality as secular people, and I wanted to think about it as a positive, natural aspect to us as human beings, and encourage us to be open and proud about who we are, and not show shame, because most religions have been very good at teaching us shame about our sexuality and telling us, shut your big mouth, don't talk about your sexuality in public. You know, if you want to go be a pervert in private, fine, but don't tell me you masturbate. Don't tell me you have 2 lovers on the side. Don't tell me you like to have porn, and especially don't do it in front of anybody I might be in church with the next day or something like that. So I'm going to challenge you, because I think many of us atheists are stuck with Christian ideas of sexuality. I have a friend that came to me about 6 months ago, right after the book came out, and he had seen me do a couple of my talks. I've known this guy for a decade. He says, I got to meet you in the coffee shop. I got to tell you something. He sits down with me and he said, I thought I knew myself as a sexual being until I heard you talk and read Sex and God, and I realized I have still got sexual guilt around stuff I learned when I was a kid. This guy has been an atheist since he was 14. I mean, and he's out. There's nothing, and he's pretty free about his sexuality. So that actually shocked me when he came to me to tell me that. But that told me something. It said even people who think they've gotten rid of all this crap still may have something hidden in it. Here's the way to test that little theory. You remember Jeff Foxworthy on It Might Be a Redneck If? Well, we're going to look at, you might be a Christian atheist if you feel guilt about masturbating. You may be a Christian atheist if you feel shame admitting that you enjoy porn. You may be a Christian atheist if you have difficulty talking to your children about sex or sexuality. You may be a Christian atheist if you have difficulty talking to your spouse or partner about sexual fantasies you would like to try. This is a big one right here. I don't know how many people have told me, I could not possibly tell my spouse that I want her to spank me or whatever, because she'd think I was a pervert. Well, there's a problem there. If you can't tell the person you love and trust the most your deepest desires, and I'm not saying she has to spank you or he has to spank you, if they don't have to participate, but if you can't even talk about it, there's something wrong with your system. And I would suggest it comes from your religious, guilt, shame-based training that you learned very early in life. You might be a Christian atheist if you feel disgust around normal sexual activities. And you hear the Christian right saying, homosexual is unnatural because they're having anal sex. Well, number one, not everybody who's homosexual has anal sex. And number two, far more heterosexual people are having anal sex than ever could possibly have anal sex if they're gay. I mean, just think about the numbers alone. Lots and lots of people like anal sex who are heterosexual. So that's not happening either. I am not a Christian, so I don't need to act like one. Here's what I call myself. I call myself a secular sexual. And I'd like to have you think about that term, a secular sexual. I'm not a Christian sexual. I'm not a Baptist sexual. I'm not a Muslim or a Mormon sexual. I'm a secular sexual. That term, I think, opens up a challenge to us to look at ourselves and get rid of the crap that we learned from this culture, because we swim in a polluted, sexually polluted culture. Even though you may have been an atheist, you still have absorbed some of the crazy ideas about sex and sexuality. So I'm a sex-positive atheist. I'm very proud of it. And I'm a secular sexual. That's what I call myself and would label myself. And I'd like you to think about that as well.